Welcome to the Southern Six Sports Podcast, brought to you by 228sports.com. Now let's get in the game with your host, Bruce Thornton.
And welcome to the Southern Six Sports Podcast, Season 3, Episode 4. We are here. It is the first official week of high school football, and man, I'm going to be talking to one of the voices of the D'Iberville Warriors. Mr. Jamey Forehand tonight is joining me. Jeremy, we have this beautiful view tonight. We are video and audio recording this. I guess there's no video, but we are on the deck of the South Beach Biloxi Hotel and Suites, and we did this last year. What was I thinking getting us indoors?
Yeah, I mean, this is a nice little, we got some nice waters, sandy beaches, nothing bad about being here on the coast.
I guess it's officially referred to as the Terrace at South Beach Biloxi Hotel and Suites right here on Highway 90. And all I can tell you is right next to the reef. If you find the reef, you'll find South Beach Biloxi Hotel and Suites. And great place to stay. I've stayed here a couple times. One of my former players, Delina Tanner, down here as I guess, I don't know what her official capacity is. She kind of runs the place, but I guess that's a good way to put it. But just like last year, me and you going to sit down and discuss coast football as we head into week one. And we will say this, we did open this up to invitation to anybody that wanted to be a part of it. We just, some last-minute deals kept Jeff Shepard from joining us. Matt Stapps was going to join us. So maybe we can catch up with them later on down the year, because I did enjoy last week. Had the chance to talk to the guys with Talking Ball, y'all, over in Pearl River County. Got the info on Picayune and Poplarville and Pearl River Central. And obviously we're going to focus on 7A and D'Iberville and Jeremy and his coverage with them. But it's that time, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, no doubt. We got that long trip to start, but that's about all I can be upset with. Other than that, it's football time,
Yeah, and when you look at it across the coast, and this has kind of been my conversation with different people, whether it's on WRB with Justin or with those guys last week, Jeremy, I mean, as we go into this season, I'm excited about it. First 5 or 6 weeks, got some great matchups. But, man, I just want to get to late October and November and find out what these coast teams can do this year, because my reoccurring thought is we got to have some teams make a run.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the widest it's been open that I recall in a while. I mean, there's no concrete team that you think is above everyone else. There's a bunch of them that are on that same plateau, but there's not one that's head and shoulders above the rest. You got Picayune coming off of their state championships, but there is Ocean Springs, Gulfport. It's wide open all across the board. I don't think there's not one that jumps out at you that's like, I mean, the only one ranked that I've seen in the entire state, I think, was Picayune, somewhat ranked, and that was it.
Yeah, and when you look at it, obviously I focus on 6A, and was talking to Coach Ray this week with the George County Rebels, and I'm like, every poll I see that different people do across the state, I see West Jones, I see Hattiesburg, I see Picayune, and I'm like, okay, that's a tough road in 6A, and that doesn't even count Pascagoula, because I'm going to put Pascagoula in there with them.
No, I mean, I think just that we're going to just in that division itself. I mean, Picayune, George County, Pascagoula. I think that's the three that's going to battle it out. It may come down to who has the home field advantage in those games, but it's crazy, the three teams, and it's also crazy the three different dynamics between the three teams.
Yeah, and then when you look at 7A, what you're going to focus on with D'Iberville, I think you still start with Gulfport and Ocean Springs. I think somebody's got to step up and get into that, compete with those two teams, beat those two teams if you're going to sit there and finish in the top two spots. But again, I see D'Iberville, I see Biloxi, I see a wide open 3, 4, 5, 6 in there. We saw St. Martin last week, and George County played really well against them in the Jamboree last Friday night. But Harrison Central, I think you put them in the mix. And so it's really going to be interesting to see how the teams kind of fight it out behind Ocean Springs and Gulfport. And can somebody step in and knock one of those two teams off?
Yeah, I mean, you got two of them that have brand new coaches, so not sure how that's going to play out. Biloxi with Coach DuBose there, and and Nakima Rich over at Harrison Central. So, I agree with you wholeheartedly that it's Gulfport and Ocean Springs is to lose, and then everybody else is playing for those last 2 playoff spots.
Yeah, and when you look at it, to me, Jeremy, the big question with 7A is, okay, you're going to get 4 teams in. Let's say Gulfport and Ocean Springs are 2 of them, and you guys are in the mix to fight for those other 2 spots. But then what are you going to do when you get there? Because for 7A, what used to be 6A, I mean, the record is just not good in that first round against Region 3. I mean, we're talking about if we take over the last, let's say 6 years, there's 24 first-round games. Has Region 4 managed to pull out 3 or 4 of them at the most?
I think if I remember right, there was one time where I know they split.
Yeah.
They went 2-2, but there was more than one where it was a complete sweep of
Right.
Region 3. So I think 2020 was the one I'm thinking about, but that may have been the only year when D'Iberville was the only one to win. But it's just it's wild, and those I think factor into the size advantage. Those teams in 3A are so much bigger, faster, and stronger. I hate to use the old cliche, but it's a whole lot different when you come across Brandon, Oak Grove, Meridian, and Pearl and Northwest Rankin and that crew. It's totally different.
And when you look at it from that standpoint, I think when you look at the schedule, Ocean Springs, Gulfport, they started this last year. We talked about this last year with the preseason of you see those teams on their schedule sprinkled in there early. Ocean Springs opening up with Madison Central.
Yeah.
Picayune opening up with Brandon. But I think that's what they're going to have to do. George County's got Hattiesburg in, I think, week 6. I mean, you got to get a kind of a feel for those teams in that Region 3 because 6A is last year you look at it, Picayune wins, Pascagoula goes to Hattiesburg, but George County was a 2 seed and got knocked off by Terry, and it still wound up West Jones and I think 3 of the 4 teams wound up in it, and so it's just as much of a challenge for those schools. And talking last week with those guys over in Pearl River County, I was like, y'all kind of been carrying the banner for the coast. When you talk about Picayune and Poplarville, we need some other people to pick it up and go. I mean, obviously, I have a vested interest in 6A in George County doing it, and just like you do, Open D'Iberville does it. But I just want to see the coast be more competitive and make a run at putting multiple teams in Hattiesburg come December.
I mean, let's take Picayune out of the mix completely. The last team to play for Picayune or Poplarville off the table. Last team to play for a state championship, I believe, would have been St. Stanislaus.
Yeah.
Back in probably 13 or 14.
And you're going back to probably Ocean Springs as far as a larger classification team, as far as that goes. George County 2007. I mean, but they're one of the ones in the conversation of the last few to do that.
It's just always been a bad matchup, and the teams on the coast have to gear their system up to be able to battle those Region 3 teams without even though you may not see them until the end. They got to figure a way to get to those teams before they get to them.
Yeah, and it's preseason. We saw the Jamboree. I mean, one of the big surprises I saw of the Jamboree was a Pascagoula 10-7 win over Ocean Springs. I think, we talked to Coach Sims a couple of weeks ago. That's a very talented team. I really see them. I know it's a rivalry game with Moss Point this week, but I don't know if that game's close in the second half.
I don't think so either. That's, from what we talked about with how, you got an interim coach at Moss Point, or I'm assuming, I don't know if they pulled the interim tag off him yet or not, but, that coaching change happened late in the spring. So, he's coaches behind the 8 ball, getting his team ready. So, and the numbers have been down on Moss Point in the last, close to 20 years here since Katrina changed a lot of things on this coast.
Yeah, when you look at it, it is one of those. That's such a huge rivalry game. I mean, I grew up in Moss Point and have followed that rivalry for my entire life. I mean, going on 50 years of following that rivalry, and went to school with Billy Wayne Miller's son, and got to know that family and different things like that. And it really is. It's a different Moss Point. It really is. Even from the time that Coach Sims was there with Coach Alexander.
I feel like you could pinpoint certain schools along the coast that have been slightly different than what they were previous. due to how Katrina changed things. And I think that's one of the things that D'Iberville has benefited from since Katrina, because so many of these kids in Biloxi, they moved north and, they end up at D'Iberville and such. So I think it's some schools that has not helped and some schools have definitely benefited. I think Picayune, for instance, have benefited greatly from it. People coming up from New Orleans and Slidell, right up Interstate 59 there. And, if there's anything good to come out of the hurricane, that would probably be the one.
Yeah, and when you look at it, that's why I invited Matt to be here tonight. Last minute thing, couldn't do it because he came out with a poll this week, and he's one of those guys. We talked about it last week with Talking Ball. These are all people that follow all of them, because you can get information from everybody. You can talk to everybody. I mean, I told the guys with Talking Ball last week, I'm not in competition. Listen to their podcast. They got some great stuff on there with Jason Baker and Ricky Whitaker and Clay Sweet and those guys. And, if you enjoy ours, listen to ours and tune in. And on Friday nights, it's great to be able to scan the radio dial and listen to different broadcasts.
Don't forget the D'Iberville Warrior postgame shows on Talking Ball, y'all.
Exactly. I mean, it's to benefit these kids. And I love the fact, you and I were talking before we went on there. He's like, he put the poll out and people are already complaining about it. It's a preseason poll where he took the time to just give who he thinks are the top 24 teams, or ranked all the coast teams. And I got no problem with it. I mean, everybody says, well, you're from George County, they're number 2. Okay. This is my honest opinion of it. Put Picayune at the top and then take the next 5 or 6 teams, put them in a hat and draw them out.
Correct.
I think you put Picayune at the top, then you take Gulfport, Ocean Springs, George County, Pascagoula, Poplarville, and 2 through 6. What does it matter?
Doesn't.
Because I think when you look at the coast, those are your 6 top teams. Now, which one's the best? I don't know. We're going to find out who gets who's playing in December.
Majority of these guys have to play each other, so we'll see it on the field.
And if a D'Iberville or a Biloxi or Hancock or somebody like that, can jump in there and knock off some of these teams, and then hey, put them up there. I mean, that's it's one of those things, because when you put these things out, it's just for discussion. And like I said, I would have had, if I was doing it, people would call me a homer, but I would probably put George County 3rd, 4th, 5th, somewhere right in there. I mean, I could see putting a Gulfport or an Ocean Springs up there in that 2 spot, but I could make an argument for any of those 5 teams.
I think somebody had asked me this question, and I want to say I went Ocean Springs 1, Gulfport 2, Picayune 3, and then I think I had George County at 4 is the way I had them. And then I basically had the same teams, maybe just not in that order. I think Pascagoula is a little low at 7. I think they're going to, make a little bit of a run there in 6A. But, I mean.
Yeah, I would probably – I agree. Like I said, I would flip them and go Shea.
The 2 teams in 7A and the 3 teams in 6A, those are your top 5 without a shadow, I think. And then you're mixing in Gaucher, who is going to be sneaky good there in 5A. And then Poplarville, they got – Jay Beach has been there. He's second longest tenured coach on the coast. So
they said that kid may be the best one out of the bunch.
So
the running back. I think he's a sophomore this year.
I think they're going to I think this is going to be their best run at the title. So
and when you look at it, they open up with Jefferson Davis County, I believe, and so that'll be a tough. But they always open up tough. I mean, it's always a test for them early on. That's one of the marquee matchups in the South as far as that goes. I love the matchup early on. Ocean Springs taking on Madison Central. Obviously, the Picayune Brandon one is massive because Brandon is one of the favorites in 7A. And then you got the rivalries. You got East Central George County. You got Moss Point Pascagoula. Those games will have a community interest in them and packed houses with that. You guys, you get Columbia again, right?
Yeah, we're on the road at Columbia.
That's a nice trip.
We get to go see a new coach there in Columbia. So I'm curious to see how that plays out with former South Panola head coach Lance Poe being at the helm there at Columbia.
And Columbia is one of those teams that, if you're talking about 4A and Poplarville, that's one of the teams they're going to keep an eye on. Are we headed towards another Columbia-Poplarville matchup, deep into the playoffs for this year?
Yeah, I mean, they had a couple doozies here these last couple of years, and, that's something got to be circled on the calendar there.
Yep. And so, obviously, your focus is 7A. And so, when you look at 7A, you've got some coaching changes. You've got some guys moving around, early on and different things. And you've got a district that, like we talked about in the beginning, everybody's kind of looking up, and it's been that way for a few years, Gulfport and Ocean Springs. And so D'Iberville is a program that is trying to find their way back to that level that was such a high level for such a long time. Harrison Central, you never know what you're going to get with Harrison Central. I think St. Martin, I just think they're a few athletes short. You don't want them to come up and bite you and get an upset or something. I mean, that's a big rivalry game for D'Iberville when you look at it. And then that unknown of what does Biloxi have, because they've been a pretty good football team under Catlin French for several years, and now DuBose, I know what they're expecting. I've been there at Biloxi for 3 years. I know there's an expectation of that ability to find somebody to take them to the next level.
Yeah, no doubt. Biloxi's always looking a little larger than they shall sometimes, but
I got to be careful. Got a D'Iberville guy talking here. So.
I'm going to try not to get too deep because I could go into weeds on this one, Coach, but I'm going to stay out. It's Ocean Springs and Gulfport's to lose, in my opinion. The remaining teams, just depends how things play out. You got, like I said, two new coaches at Harrison Central and Biloxi. Curious to see how it plays out. Harrison Central always got plenty of athletes. It's just a matter of if they can put it together, that sort of thing. I'm expecting the Warriors to take a little bit of a step. I don't know how big the step is going to be. They've made a change on defense with a new coordinator. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. The offense seems to be in the jamboree, which at least looked a little bit more wide open, in my opinion. They would, pass a lot more often than I was expecting. So I'm curious to see how that plays out, but expecting big things out. I don't know that 3 and 4 slot. I hope the Warriors are in that position, but I really don't know at this point.
Well, I think you're in the mix. I mean, I really look at D'Iberville, Harrison Central, and Biloxi battling it out for those 2 spots. I mean, that's kind of been my prediction all along. For those other 2 playoff spots. I just think St. Martin has some athletes that just don't quite have enough. Now, doesn't mean they're not dangerous. You don't want to fool around and get tripped up with them because they're going to play hard. I saw that the other night with George County. The kids play hard. But overall, I think you could see really realistically those 3 teams battling for 2 spots.
Yeah, and I think it'll help us out because out of the district schedule, 3 out of the 5 are at home, so that may help out somewhat. We play Ocean Springs, Harrison Central, and St. Martin at home, so that could factor in as well.
Yeah.
We'll always, that, like we talked about last year with the schedules changing, we finished with Biloxi now instead of St. Martin, so that could be a huge game playing Biloxi there in the last week of the season.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I mean, that could be there could be a playoff spot on the line for that, and I could see those 3 and 4 seeds coming down to tiebreakers and points and head to head. Obviously, will play a role in it, but it's going to be interesting. So when you look at it again, you've got Stone County at Biloxi Friday night. You got Madison Central at Ocean Springs. You got Van Cleve at St. Martin. You got Gaucher at Harrison Central. That's a tough draw for Harrison Central. That's part of I think that's the part of the Port City Classic. And then you got Greenville Christian against Gulfport, that unknown private school, that drew a lot of attention a couple of years ago.
That was the one that pushed Oak Grove to the limit?
Yeah.
Is that who that is?
That's it. Yep. And so those are the matchups for them. And then you guys make that trip over to Columbia to take on the Wildcats. So it's interesting to see. I mean, I think we get a good read on St. Martin against Van Cleve. I think that's two teams that are really evenly matched. I think Van Cleve's going to be real physical with them. Gaucher and Harrison Central, a lot of athletes on the field. And if
Gaucher's got the quarterback back, so
yeah. And Stone still trying to recover from Feaster. His move to Moss Point and now headed back to Pearl River Central. Because he had that program really going in the right direction. I think they took a step back last year, but opening up at Biloxi, there'll be a lot of enthusiasm and excitement to open up the Coach DuBose era there at Biloxi.
Yeah, I'm curious. I might have to make a call to the superintendent and check in on that and see how it's going.
And so that's, when you look at 7A. So when we come back, take a quick break here, and then we'll come back and keep talking to Jamey. Jamey Foster's here as well. I'm going to catch up with him, see what's going on as we talk about what 228 Sports has got going on. Busy, man. We have been covering – what have we been covering? We've been covering volleyball. We've been covering golf tournaments. We got football jamborees, swimming. We got cross country coming up Saturday. I know we got some students that are really excited about that. So we'll be talking to Jamey and see what we got going on with that as we return to the Southern Six Sports Podcast. Here we are on the terrace at the South Beach Biloxi Hotel and Suites. Beautiful view of the Gulf tonight. And a nice breeze coming in off the water. And Jeremy Forehand, Jamey Foster, and I will be right back.
Hey, all of you South Mississippi sports fans. Are you ready for some high school prep sports this fall? Get in the game with the new 228 Sports app. Live scores, breaking news, players of the week, and so much more. Now available for iPhone and Android devices. Download the first dedicated high school sports app for South Mississippi today. Only from 228sports.com.
Ready to score big with the best sports coverage on the Mississippi Gulf Coast? Then lock your radio on WPMO. We're like the cool uncle who knows a little too much about sports, the one who gives play-by-plays at every family barbecue. From local high school games to the SEC and even the Atlanta Braves, tune your radio into 1580 or WPMOradio.com. Dave Ramsey is also back weekdays from 2 till 4 p.m., and you'll find the local and national news every weekday morning. WPMO, the talk of South Mississippi.
And welcome back to episode 4 of the Southern Six Sports Podcast, brought to you by 228 Sports. I'm your host, Bruce Thornton, talking the first week of high school football with Jamey Forehand. And we are, again, on the terrace at the South Beach Biloxi Hotel and Suites right here south of Highway 90. Just a beautiful evening here as we are recording this podcast this week. Getting excited, getting fired up for some high school football on Friday night across the coast. And in the case of D'Iberville, a little farther north of the coast as they will make a trip up to Columbia to take on the Wildcats. Talk a little bit about 7A. Obviously, 6A is something that I am taking a big interest in, covering George County. Every Friday night will be in East Central for that rivalry game Friday night. And a lot of excitement about that program. I talked to Coach Ray on our coaches show this week, and the expectations, Jeremy, because of the talent on that team. I mean, obviously, Deuce Knight gets the attention that the 5-star Notre Dame commit, but there's a lot of weapons around Deuce Knight, and I think this team has a chance from a skill position standpoint to be really special.
Yeah, it's just, it brings you back. There's some folks that may not realize who has came through George County in years previous, and we're talking about Eric Molds, we're talking about Billy Joe. Yep. We're talking about lots of guys come through our five.
We got McKinley Jackson on the final roster of the Cincinnati Bengals right now.
Numerous Fry Fogels coming through there. So I mean, there's lots of talent that have rolled through there. It's just a matter of putting it together. They probably had one of the better teams when they came to D'Iberville back in 01 and 02, I would imagine. I don't want to talk about that. But
you can. I don't want to talk about it.
I know, but, so there's talent there. It's just a matter of, putting it where you need it and pushing it forward and that sort of thing. So I think they got a chance to make a run at Picayune. If not, I don't think it's that crazy to think they could win the district, without a doubt.
Well, the schedule is interesting because the region schedule, because the first week right off the bat you get Picayune and Pascagoula, so that puts somebody behind the 8 ball right there. And then the last 2 weeks of the season we play Picayune and then turn around on a Thursday night at the end of the season and play Pascagoula. So you kind of, one of those two teams kind of gets put behind it, right off the bat with a loss, and then you get down to that last two games, and again it gets, it's just like last year. Bill Glenn and I talked about it a couple of weeks ago when we did the podcast down in Pascagoula, and we're like, we know that Thursday night is going to be at Gilmart Stadium this year, that game's going to have something on the line, whether it's a region championship whether it's home playoff game, seeding, whatever. I mean, you just feel like it is. And I think the district, Jeremy, is very similar to what we talked about in 7A or the region, in the fact of, okay, except maybe it's a little deeper because you got 3 teams.
You got 3 fighting for
right.
fight. You got the top 3 for sure.
And then you put Hancock, West Harrison. I think you put Hancock and West. I don't think Long Beach is quite ready. Greene County put a lot of points up on them last week and a half in the Jamboree. I think something like 40 something. So I don't think they're quite ready yet. Now they're similar to St. Martin. You can't let them sneak up on you.
Yeah.
And George County opens up district region play with Long Beach. And I talked to Coach Ray about that because that's going to be an interesting game to start off because it's going to be coming off a trip to Wayne County and a trip to Hattiesburg. So, we'll see. That's down the road. But I do think where we talk about in 7A, you talk about 2 spots going to be taken and then 3 teams battling for the other 2.
Yep.
Well, in 6A, I think 3 spots get taken and then you got 2 teams battling for the other, whether it's West Harrison or Hancock. And then, like I said,
and I'm curious to see how Hancock plays out. They lost the quarterback, had a big senior class they lost. So curious to see how they regroup on that end. And Coach Patrick over at West Harrison, he's developing something out there. Just got a brand new field house. So it's just a matter of turning that corner, and pushing for that 4th spot.
Yeah, and West Harrison, I mean, we got into a crazy game down there a couple of years ago. I think they were up 35-7 or something like that at the half, and then we come back and outscore them like 42-7 in the second half or something, or 35-7 maybe. It ended up tied and we lose. We missed the extra point in overtime and lose like 50-49 or something just ridiculous. So they're a team that and that's the thing about 6A is there are teams with very distinct personalities about what they're going to do. As in, okay, you're getting ready to play Picayune, you know what you're going to get. You get ready to play West Harrison, you know what you're going to get with that single wing and the offense that they run. And then Pascagoula, if there is a team that's going to put quality skill position players out there to match George County, it's going to be Pascagoula. I think Picayune's just going to be physical. Can you stand the physicality of Picayune? But as far as the quarter kid at quarterback, the wide receivers, the backs and things.
Well, you got a quarterback that's been playing. This is his 3rd year starting, so that's a key position and a key thing to have on your team. I'm sure he could probably call that offense. Yeah. With his eyes closed, without asking for any kind of help.
A lot of confidence Coach Sims puts in him, and that's going to be like I said, an interesting night that Thursday night at the end of the year with Pascagoula and George County. It was a great ball game last year, but Pascagoula starts out at home again. We talked about it with the rivalry with Moss Point. You got Picayune at home welcoming Brandon. George County's at East Central. Mentioned, let's see, down West Harrison is at Greene County. That's a game I'm going to pay some attention to because that's George County's opponents down the road. We got Greene County in week 2 and then West Harrison in district. So I'm interested to see 2 very different offensive philosophies.
That could be if you're a betting guy, which I am not. You would take the over.
I would take the over.
Easy
whatever
over.
It is.
Might take the first half over in the game over.
No doubt, because West Harrison is going to try to pile up the yards on the ground, and Greene County's got a wide receiver named Chase Matthews that you are going to hear about. He will be playing on Saturdays when he graduates Greene County, and he is a special athlete, and he scares me to death in 2 weeks when George County takes on Greene County. And you got Pass Christian at Long Beach.
Good old Oyster Bowl.
Oyster Bowl there, good rivalry game. Long Beach, a team, got to find some wins early. I mean, when they get in district, it's going to be really tough. But against a smaller classification and Pass Christian,
I think they got a couple shots. They play Pass Christian. They play St. Stanislaus at one point. I want to say they play Bay High, too. So they got a shot to get a couple.
Yep. Hancock gets Natchez coming into town. You never know what you're going to get with Natchez. I don't care what sport you're playing. It's just an unknown with that. So when you look at that from a standpoint of Region 4, 6A, some interesting matchups. And then down the road, you're going to see some. Like I said, George County has got a trip to Wayne County, which we've about decided we've never won in Wayne County as good as we've been. We've never beaten Wayne County up there, and then a trip to Hattiesburg, which is Hattiesburg widely regarded as the one team that's going to push West Jones in Region 3 6A.
Yeah, Wayne County's a tricky. We finally made a trip to Wayne County. I think it might have been in 2020 in the COVID year, That was our first time up there. We played them game 1, I believe it was. But, yeah, that's definitely – first of all, if you're not a fan of the Auburn Tigers, you will not like visiting Wayne County. Right. But, yeah, that's a place that's with a lot of history, athletes galore, just a matter of whether they're on the football field or not. So
no doubt.
It's a tough place to go.
Yeah, and you get and then just kind of going ahead and running through, 5A to me is interesting from a standpoint of outside of Gaucher, can the other teams compete with Wayne County and more important with Laurel, because those two teams, I think Laurel opens up with West Jones this week, which is one of them games where if you're not watching your team play, then you might want to go watch
Head
that
up to
one.
Jones County.
Yeah, but that's one of the top matchups around the state this week as well. But I think you saw this last year. Gaucher's that team that, from an athletic standpoint, they can compete with the Wayne Counties and Laurels. Whereas you look at East Central Van Cleve, they got to go power football, they got to control the ball, and they really got to be more physical than those teams because they don't necessarily have the speed to keep up with those teams.
Yeah, and it's Gaucher did what they did, and people might not realize they did it without their starting quarterback. He was down week 1. We seen him in week 2 versus D'Iberville, and the kid they had in place, he filled in admirably and led his team to South State versus, I believe they played Laurel again in South State, if I remember right.
They did.
So, it's Coach. These last 4 to 5 years, Coach High has had that Gaucher Gators team on a roll, and I think that's going to continue to roll. Like we said, it's a matter of what's Van Cleve going to do and what's East Central going to do in order to get into that 4th spot.
And then you put Stone in there because it's very similar to what we talked about. Okay, I'm going to say Wayne County's going to get in somehow, even though they haven't been Wayne County of old the last couple of years. But you give Laurel a spot, you give Gaucher a spot, and then let's just say the other two are up for grabs. You throw Wayne County, Stone, East Central, Van Cleve into that mix.
It could come down to that final game between East Central and Van Cleve.
Very well could, and so that's really how this thing plays out. And then I say this every week because we've been talking about football for the last couple of weeks. 4A is that, okay, there's Poplarville, and then I have no clue because I've already talked about it. Green County's got some weapons. We don't know what Moss Point's got numbers-wise. I mean, I think, the last couple of years they've got off to horrible starts, and then they get into division play and they win a couple of games and they're in the playoffs. Yep. They go 2-8 and they get a first-round win in the playoffs or something like that.
Yeah,
that's a district where you talk about the last week of the season, you're adding up points and you're looking at point differentials and you're saying who beat who and all that, because that thing comes down to some crazy tiebreakers.
Wide slap open.
Yes, because I don't know if it's just the 5 teams in the district, whatever it is, but usually Poplarville's got everything clinched. I think Jason was saying last year they had it clinched 2 weeks before the season ended. They go up to Green County and Green County beats them, and Coach Beach just said we weren't ready to play, but they'd done their work leading up to it and it didn't come back and hurt them. But I do think that. I mean, you got Bay High taking on Resurrection. Coach Denmark can then pull off the upset last year. Can they do it 2 years in a row?
Yeah, that's I don't know. From what I've been reading, this Bay High team is supposed to be very improved. So curious to see how that goes. But yeah.
Jamey with a little insight to Resurrection over here. He's nodding his head. No, Coach Denmark's got a young bunch this year, doesn't he? And we're on audio now. Don't nod your head.
Yeah.
This is not television. You can speak now. I tell people on the radio all the time, you can't nod your head. Nobody sees a nod. But they do. I mean,
they have a really young team, and they have, I mean, they've got a couple standout guys, but still they lost a lot of people last year.
And that'll be one of those teams that they'll get better as the year goes along.
Speaking of travel during the season,
I don't think they have a less than 3-hour trip ahead of them.
No, and that's the challenge
They
Coach
need to
Denmark and I
sponsor
talk
with
about.
a Greyhound bus or something.
Hotart Charter, or whatever the name of that company is in Southeast Mississippi. But you look at it from that standpoint. I mean, they don't really have a choice. They have to match up with bigger schools the first couple of weeks of the season because there just aren't any around here.
No,
as far as 1A.
I want to say the closest 1A school is. Is it Hattiesburg?
I don't even think of Presbyterian Christian. I think they're a bigger school. I think they're playing Presbyterian Christian, but I think they're a bigger school. I know maybe a Sacred Heart, something like that. That might be the closest. And then, we don't deal with 2A any. And then you talk about 3A, and you're talking about St. Patrick and St. Stanislaus, but they just really haven't gotten. I've read some stuff on St. Patrick. They got a good group coming back, so I mean, there's a few more expectations, but for them, it's really hard because you start talking about Division 7 and 6 in 3A, and some of those teams are just better. I mean, they're just more physical, and the athletes they put on the field, and it's really hard for Stanislaus and those guys at St. Patrick to keep up. I mean, they play hard, and I think both of them are going to be in the running for a third or fourth playoff spot, but I don't see them challenging anybody for a division championship.
No, I mean, they're battling teams like Jefferson Davis County and that sort, and it's just a tough matchup on their behalf, and some of them, they just don't have enough kids to compete,
And that is an issue when you start talking about some of these smaller classification schools and you get kids going both ways and all of this stuff that you have to deal with. And so when you look at the schedule this week, Jamey, and if you weren't going to be going to D'Iberville and Columbia and you could pick one game out of the coast, what you pick?
So I'm going to answer that two different ways.
So you got two games?
If
just make it up. Okay, you can split yourself in two and go to two games, I guess. So go ahead and tell me.
No, I would go to Ocean Springs and Madison Central. That would be a choice. But then I'd go to one that I don't necessarily would visit ever, and I would go to Pascagoula Moss Point. So.
Yeah, that's a big
I mean,
rivalry game.
there's a couple places I had never played football in high school, and Pascagoula Moss Point is two of them, and then Gulfport's a third one. I never played against them in high school, so it's be always something to see it on Friday nights.
There you go. I think the Madison Central Ocean Springs game, I guess, gets along with Brandon and Picayune. I think they get co-billing as the top two games as far as the marquee of the state. I think when you talk about Poplarville taking on Jefferson Davis County, if you're going to talk 3A, 4A in that area, that's as good as it gets there. But these are some interesting matchups for week one, and you and I talked about it last year when we went to this new classification. It's interesting to watch these bigger schools and how they schedule. I was talking to Ricky and Clay and them guys last week. I'm like, look, that's y'all's fault. Y'all beat up on everybody every year. Nobody wants to play you, so you go get you some of Jackson and Brandon. I mean that's what they got to do.
And the craziest thing I saw about the Picayune schedule is I want to say they play 7 home games if I remember right.
I think they get, and that's one of the things I didn't mention. They get the Pascagoula game and the George County game at home, which is going to be huge. So was that back-to-back kind of? Well, one's at the beginning of the year and one's the next to last game, but they're both in Picayune, and that's a hard place to play.
Yeah, I want to say they play.
That cannon goes off every time. And it goes off a lot.
I think they got a new field house as well. If I remember right.
They were doing some construction over there. We were over there in the fall last year, in the spring for baseball.
Hopefully they got that AC fixed in the visitors' press box.
Don't count on. I'm not counting on that.
Because we'll see them in like week 4, so we'll still need that AC if we can.
Well, our schedule, George County is interesting. I can give a good preview of Class 5A because I think we've got East Central, Van Cleve, and Wayne County all on our schedule. So we've got over half of the 5A.
Three good rivalry games nearby.
Yeah, we do have some good gates. And I told Coach Ray yesterday on the coaches show, I was like, Hattiesburg's kind of like a midterm exam. Let's go through the 5 weeks of the season and then go up to Hattiesburg, and we'll find out then, and I think it'll be a great test for the Rebels. And I know there's going to be games mixed in all the way. I mean, that's the thing about this, Jeremy, is you play more non-district games than you do district games. Now, region or division, whatever you call them, but you've got to be very imaginative with your schedule, and you've got to challenge your team. I think for some teams, like a Long Beach, St. Martin, some of those teams, you got to find games that, hey, you can get some confidence in, or if you're coming off a year where you really struggled, you got to take that into account. And then money's important too. Our schedule, we go to East Central. That'll be a great gate, if I can speak. Then we get Greene County at home. That'll be money. And then we get Van Cleve coming there, and that'll be some money. And so you got to be able to do that. I mean, from my coaching perspective, I know you've got to put those in on Friday nights because the football athletic programs, they can generate revenue that no other sport can.
Yeah, and then you got to factor in at what point do you want to slide the bye week in? Do you want it early? Do you want it right before your district?
Yeah. George County's not even playing one.
Do you want it in the middle, or do you want to play straight through? I mean, Picayune, I think, is playing straight through as well. So,
yep. And so
I mean, D'Iberville has theirs scheduled to where they play Wayne County after, and then we go right into district. So they're actually 2 weeks prior to opening. So
yeah, and a lot of that goes into it, and it'll be interesting to see because come December, around state championship time, they'll announce the new classifications, all the numbers. We're in that 2-year rotation now where we'll find out if there are any changes and movements with anybody, and then you kind of got to do it all over again. If you don't like your schedule, you get through this year because most of this year is the back end of a home and home that you've agreed on if you've got, if you haven't made coaching change or anything like that. But we get to December, it'll be opened up. I mean, we're talking about a lot of different things.
It's not a scary thing to think of, but then you think of this 5A, 6A, and 7A, those three. Because as soon as they have one too many on that lower half, somebody's got to go up to 3.
And we were talking about, 6A and Pearl River Central was that one this year, and they open up this Friday night as well. We didn't mention the Blue Devils. They played in the Jamboree with Purvis and East Central last week over at Pearl River Community College and Coach Feaster's new crew. They open up, let me find it. You got St. Stanislaus at Forest County. We didn't mention that one. Pearl River Central's at South Pike. Going to Magnolia, Mississippi, I don't think it's quite as difficult as it used to be, but that's still not one of my favorite places.
Any place in Pike County is tough.
Yeah, and you got Sacred Heart at St. Patrick rounding out the schedule, and we mentioned Resurrection at Bay High with the 3A and the 1A schools. But Pearl River and Coach Feaster, I mean, he's gonna if they're patient, he'll get that. But man, that's a tough district because you're staring at West Jones, you're staring at Terry, you're staring at Hattiesburg. Now they open up with Jim Hill because Forest Hill is an independent, so they're not even playing district. So we talked about this last week with those guys. If they could open up with a win and get Jim Hill, then it puts them in really good shape to get in as a 4 seed. Yeah. It may reward you with a trip to Picayune. How cool would that be for Pearl River County, man? Because
Coach Feaster playing his old squad.
I mean, that's a real possibility. It happened a couple of times last year in other sports where they matched up because I don't think they had any regular season matchups. Some disagreements over
I just think Coach
whatever.
Feaster's got his hands full. He's got a lot to work with. I went up when the Talking Ball y'all guys had their little preseason prep up in Poplarville. Went to the town green there in Poplarville, and Coach Feaster's got a lot to deal with. Not only just being the head coach, he's also the athletic director. So he has more than his plate full. And he's got a lot of work to do and a lot of things to change and turn around. So. I wish him the best.
No doubt. And so it's interesting to see, but it's going to be fun. I mean, we got 5-6 weeks of non-district play, and then we kind of just reset the clock. Everybody starts at 0-0, and you move forward for 5 weeks of tough district games, and then you move down to, to 4A, and you get to the 4 weeks of district games because they're in 5-team divisions. But it's going to be interesting to see, but like I said, I just can't, Jeremy, get away from that theme of we got to get into November. We got to get some teams playing that week before Thanksgiving. We got to get some teams playing the week of Thanksgiving because that's South State.
Yeah.
And then try to put a couple teams. I mean, can you imagine 2 or 3, 4 teams just making that 45, 50-minute drive up to Hattiesburg for a state championship?
Be a nice little crowd up there.
No doubt. And so it's time for Region 4, Division 8, whichever one you're a part of, to kind of step up and get it going.
Yeah, it's tough, but hey, it's doable.
That's it. So there you go. We're looking forward to it. All right, we're going to take a quick break and come back and talk to Jamey. Jeremy's going to hang around a few minutes as we got one more segment to go on our podcast this week. And I want to talk to Jamey a little bit about what 228 Sports has got going on and everything that we're covering, our student reporters. That pool continues to grow, and just talk to him and see what's going on with that. When we return to the Southern Six Sports Podcast out on the terrace of the South Beach Biloxi Hotel and Suites in downtown Biloxi, Highway 90. We'll be right back.
Hey, all of you South Mississippi sports fans, are you ready for some high school prep sports this fall? Get in the game with the new 228 Sports app. live scores, breaking news, players of the week, and so much more. Now available for iPhone and Android devices. Download the first dedicated high school sports app for South Mississippi today. Only from 228sports.com.
And welcome back to the Southern Six Sports Podcast. Man, episode 4, season 3, we have been previewing the first week of high school football with Jamey Forehand. And Jeremy, how can people find you guys Friday night? Where are we tuning into to listen to D'Iberville football?
We'll be able to show video on all games. So we'll have video and audio on the D'Iberville Warrior Booster Club page. Just check in. We'll try to start about 15 minutes prior to game time there. And anything you'll be able to find video-wise will be on there. And then we'll have the D'Iberville Warrior post-game show that'll be brought to you on Talking Ball, y'all. So tune into that. That'll be out probably sometime Sunday or Monday.
There you go. All right. And then, because you had put something on social media about the broadcast, and we've decided you can hear, obviously, D'Iberville, George County, 106.9, or you can tune in WRBFM.com. And they got a listen live link there. We don't have we ain't got the visual yet, but we're just audio. I got to work on that. But anyway, Biloxi. Tune in to find Biloxi. Obviously, Ocean Springs. Jeff Shepard.
He should be on the. You can find any of the Ocean Springs Roku apps as well as Gulfport. Same thing. And then Jeff's also on 103.1.
Yeah. And then you've got obviously all the Pearl River crew, Poplarville, Picayune, Pearl River Central. So Pascagoula, Jamey, Bill Glenn, and that crew will be covering that.
Bill Glenn and Tommy Dorsey.
Yep. And so, Friday night you're just riding around and not at a ball game. You can find one.
No doubt.
Or sitting at the house. The way everything's online now, you just gotta Google it, I guess.
Google helps you out with everything.
That's it. Yeah. And speaking of covering Friday nights, Jamey, 228 Sports, I know we got our first edition of Wicks Picks this week on the website, and Mike Wixon back at it again.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
It's going to be interesting. I literally remember Mississippi Press Wicks Picks. I mean, there was a long line of Wicks Picks and Arthur's Analysis and Rock's Locks and there was just all, and Doug Barber's picks. I used to always look at them. I mean, it's bringing back memories of those days, and now they're out there again.
Well, did you read Mike's long anecdote about getting on the horse and riding bareback? I was like, all right, where's this going?
Yeah, that was an interesting take on it, but I did see that, and some interesting picks. I think I would have probably went the same way with most of them. We'll see, but it's always fun. I did run into Doug Barber last week. I went to a movie. I went to see The Forge with my wife, and ran into Doug and got a chance to talk to him a little bit, and those guys. And so 228 Sports, I mean, the plan is we got games of the week, we got coverage, albeit obviously the East Central George County game. We'll get a wrap up on that, and we got Moss Point, Pascagoula.
Yep.
Focus on that one.
We have some students out this week. I'm honestly still tired from last weekend. I spent the night over in Gulfport working with our student reporter over there. We've got Jordan Bradley, of course, that you know.
Yep.
She's going to be covering George County. And then the Battle of the Cats in Pascagoula, Reagan Hoffheinz, who we had last year, she's kind of taken in the assistant role with Leah.
Yep.
So, it's kind of funny. I sent out a group. We have a group text that we communicate with. And so I sent something out, and I just individually critique them and tell them what I want to see. And Leah chimes in, and these kids are excited. They're ready. They're ready to get out there, and you see some of these. They're still in their uniform. They come right off the court and they do these interviews.
Yeah, there's been several volleyball players interviews. Abby Tung did up at Greene County, and I know Jordan did one with Coach Christian at George County, and covering it. And it's interesting. We had those guys on a couple of weeks ago with Leah, and it was interesting to hear them talk about the sports. Like, what's your favorite sport? And we're like soccer, and they like cross country. So they're really getting out. We had some photographs from the girls golf tournament up at Whispering Pines the other day, and just getting that coverage, because we sometimes forget, Jeremy, and I'm as guilty as anybody this time of year. There's volleyball going on, there's cross country, and there's golf. Those are all fall sports now, and these athletes are out there working hard.
Yeah, it's a lot out there. All you got to do is just go find out and go see. I mean, Kevin Roberts, my broadcast partner from the previous 4 years, he's the athletic director at Dyersville now, so he's constantly posting different things that's going on in the county, and comment about, go out and see some, don't just sit at the house.
Well, and what I've noticed too is when these student reporters, just when I was at Gulfport last week, it was just like, I mean, I'm just me, but they were, how do I get involved? How do I want to do this? And so now just by being out there, we've got a little student reporter, Sophia Swinger, that's going to start up from Gulfport. But, this 228 Sports it's for these athletes. I've always been a big proponent of, training the next generation up, and they're excited to get involved with it. And so seeing the community embracing it and stuff, I mean, hey, we're ESPN for high school. That's what we are. We're just trying to give them something to look forward to and while we give these athletes a well-deserved platform.
We're just not going to give our political views.
No. Sorry.
We're
SP.
I get so frustrated with you. Like, okay, just give me a score. Where's my baseball highlights? How did the Braves do? Just show me some highlights. I don't need the story on everything going. But
speaking of scores, we just did a big update to the app. So if you open the app, you've got a big banner right on top that says "See Scores," and we're at the mercy of ScoreStream, but hey, you got scores.
Yeah, and so it is, and if you're out there at a game and can get in touch with us and just text the score or something, but I mean, chances are somebody from 228 Sports is going to be there. But especially early in the year when you've got so many teams like a D'Iberville. Going to Columbia, that's out of our area, Jeremy is going to be there obviously covering it, but it's a little bit more difficult early in the schedule than it will be come week 6, week 7 when you got D'Iberville at Biloxi or wherever they open up, in George County's at West Harrison, and you're knocking out, as they say, 2 birds, 1 stone. But right now, you get some of those matchups, a lot of them, but you still get those outliers, a Picayune and Brandon and Ocean Springs, Madison Central, a D'Iberville, Columbia matchup, and we want to get those scores in and those reports as well, and we really want to bring you those stories, and I'm looking forward to what these student reporters will bring to the table, because we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Mackenzie Knight set the bar awfully high.
She did.
But I think these young men and young ladies are really excited about it, and it won't be perfect. If you're a coach and listens to our podcast, be patient with them. Sometimes we talked about that about interviews and some of the questions and things, and I think they've got a pretty good script and what they're going to be talking about. But it's still the heat of the moment, and
as long as they don't say home run during a football game.
That's right. But I am excited about it, and it's always great to check out the 228 on social media and see the photographs. Like I said, the girls golf tournament was, because I keep up, obviously our George County girls were in it, and one of their parents post pictures and things. I'm like, okay, let me look. Okay, I know what they were wearing. That's a George County girl, and she's getting a little publicity at a golf tournament. And Jeremy, my son's been in golf a long time, and that's not always the case.
I'm going to go off the beaten path and just say I can't say I'm proud enough as I was seeing him and his team win the national championship there at Perk. So shout out, this is my official shout out to Mr. Bradford.
His head gets big enough already. I can't, I'm contractually obligated on Wednesdays and Fridays on WRV to mention him in the first segment or whatever whenever he does something. So I'm trying to.
Looking forward to seeing him in a couple weeks at our first game at Perk.
Again, the Mississippi crew down at Perk last week, I thought that was a lot of fun. I called him. I said, "Are you interviewing?" He's like, "No." He's kind of had his feelings hurt. And I said, well, I called him back. I said, well, the president was on, and the first thing she mentioned was you in the national championships. I said, don't feel bad.
There you go.
So they were interviewing the volleyball
coach.
Real
happy for him. And, he's the best the best tour I had. Okay. Tour I ever had in Perk was when he drove me around on homecoming.
Yeah, he was your.
He was my host.
Yeah, he was your host. He's got that trip around Perk down pat. He sells it really well over there on those recruiting trips. But we can't forget. I mean, Jamey, and that's something that 228 Sports. We can't forget about the community colleges. I mean, we've got our athletes are all over Jones and Pearl River and Gulf Coast and all these areas, and so we're not going to lose focus on them either.
We have somebody at Perk. I've been going back and forth with him. He is really interested in commentating and doing color and stuff, and he's interested in kind of all aspects of it. He's going to school majoring in sports broadcast, so hey, this fits. This is this platform is for everyone. It's for the community, and that's what I want.
Don Hammock and Patrick Oakes have always done a great job, Gulf Coast and Pearl River, and been very helpful for me anytime I've asked for information. And I know they're, and we talked to them about some of these kids last year about, hey, we got some that are interested in continuing on, and that's what you're trying to build with this. I think that's your goal, is to say, okay, let's get your teeth cut on covering these high school games, and when you get to college, you slide right in there and you just move forward from there.
Well, and it's not news that nobody wants to read about. I mean, this is stuff that's going on in the community with your football and your sports teams and the schools, and these kids are there.
Yep.
I mean, I can't be a school all day, but they can, and they can talk about what's going on, and we get firsthand what's happening from their perspective, and that's kind of cool to me.
Yep. And so
boots on the ground.
No doubt. And hopefully we'll catch up with some of them. I know James is just dying to get on the show, and we're going to get him involved in it. And I'm going to pull Justin Estes, my radio co-host on George County Football. He's going to join me a little bit as well on some of these future podcasts.
I'm kind of interested to see if James Spain can out-stat you.
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, he would, he could spit it out. So there's no doubt. I don't know. He might want to take my job. He may be the future host of the Southern Six Sports Podcast. And hey, if that's where it progresses for him, I'll be the proudest one of the bunch because it's just an opportunity for these kids to cover their classmates, to cover their school, to cover their community, and bring you something and do it in a way that they're excited about. Because it's one thing for Mike Wixon or Rob Sigler or whoever to be standing there as an adult and asking questions and covering sports, but it's another thing for a kid that walks those halls every day, Jeremy, and is around these kids every day to sit there and be excited about the fact that they've got a role to play in this.
It might make the questions a lot easier. I mean, I know how I was when I got interviewed in high school, and I was a blubbering, stuttering mess. So it may help having a student who is a peer talking to them and getting the questions and the answers that you need.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, and everything else with our Mississippi home, 228 Sports, everything just kind of rolling along with that. I mean, we don't get a chance to talk about that part of the thing.
Yeah. So I've been working hard, and with the help of what you do with the podcast, with what Bill Glenn does out in the community with his job, been able to make some really good relationships. And so starting next week, actually, Cannon Automotive, I have to mention them. They're stepping in to help support what 228 Sports is doing. That's huge for us. And not to mention, speaking of the podcast, I don't know if I've actually mentioned this, but we're top 10 sports podcast in the state of Mississippi, according to FeedSpot. I don't know anything about who rates that or what, but I mean, that's just a testament to I
saw that and I'm like, okay, this is, I'll take it. But everything else was like the Thunder and Lightning podcast or the To the Top. I'm like, oh wait, this little high school podcast is in there too. So.
Well, I'm just the publisher. So, I mean, I'm here with a celebrity, Jamey Forehand, and then another celebrity, Bruce Thornton. So,
well, I don't know. But I was tickled and beyond proud of that. And appreciative of it, humbled by it, because didn't expect that. This little 228 podcast, the first couple of weeks, Jeremy was like, Jamey, is anybody even listening to this thing? Because I don't want to be wasting anybody's time. But
to this date, we've had more than 2,000 downloads.
That was awesome. Thank y'all.
Yeah.
Appreciate y'all putting up with us and listening. Hopefully we can continue to bring some information. And moving forward, obviously, as the weeks go on, we're going to focus on coaches and information. I'm working on some interviews and a few more special podcasts like we've done this week with the Shuckers, and I know Jamey's working with some things as well. We love to be on location. I mean, last week we did one from Paw Paw's Camper City in Picayune, and tonight again we're at South Beach Biloxi Hotel and Suites.
Yeah, I can't really complain about this view.
No, not at all. And so I don't mind, getting out, taking it on the road. We'll do some from different locations in Lucedale as my home base, I guess, so to speak. But I would like to say moving forward who our guest is going to be, Jeremy, but I really don't know, because last year Resurrection knocks off Bayhigh in week 1. I'm like, well, I need to talk to Coach Denmark. I mean, that's a big deal. And so I'm kind of waiting to see how this thing goes this week.
It gave you the old number 2 signal.
That's it, yeah. And so, we just kind of play it by ear. And as we move forward, I mean, we're only a couple of weeks away from volleyball playoffs, and I get a chance to talk to some of those coaches, and they're always real excited to talk about their girls, because girls sports and some of the minor sports are less than, the ones that don't always get the attention are near and dear to my heart, because I've coached softball for so many years. So I love to talk about, what the girls teams are doing volleyball-wise. And just a heads up, OLA is still really good with volleyball, but so is Ocean Springs, Gulfport. They got a big matchup Thursday night. Hancock's really good. I mean, those are some of the top teams. I enjoy writing those articles each week for 228 Sports as well. Tyler Denmark called me out, said I got his Van Cleve's record wrong, and anyway, so I'm gonna blame it on SB Live. So anyway,
we get called out every day.
That's all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's
he did,
none of them are right.
He was just
so.
it was just poking fun at me. Well, that was all in good fun with Tyler. But
relax, people, relax.
Yeah, Van Cleve and East Central are going to be battling.
I can't wait for Wick's picks to go.
If we did a thing on volleyball, I could say the same thing in 7A. Ocean Springs and Gulfport really good. 6A, Hancock, George County, Long Beach, really good. 5A, Van Cleve, East Central, really good. And you just go down the list, and then OLA is just head and shoulders. I think they're looking for their 20th state championship.
I think our Warriors at D'Iberville have started 2-0 in district.
They are right there with Ocean Springs and Gulfport. They got a big
matchup last week, and looked like a decent crowd when they played Biloxi last week.
Yep, they've gotten off to an undefeated start, sitting at the top of the division with Ocean Springs and Gulfport. So it's going to be those three teams have really kind of separated themselves from everybody else. But I want to mention it, and we did last year, Jeremy. I would be remiss to not get an update on how you were doing. I know you just got back from Houston and making that trip over, but how's everything going with that?
So I'm feeling pretty good. There's a day or two here and there that might be a little bit of trouble, but overall I feel pretty good. Just came back from doing a CT scan, MRI, and some blood work, and seeing the doctor. Doctor visit was very good. It was majority of the areas are stable at the moment. There are a few areas that we're checking on or watching going into the next appointment, which is going to be around in December. There's a chance having to do the gamma knife treatment again, which is the radiation of the brain. But we're going to see how it goes up until that point. I'm going to continue on the treatment that I'm on now, and we'll just play it day by day. It's about all you can do.
Yeah, and we'll continue to keep you and your family in our prayers. And I know if you don't follow
Appreciate
Jeremy, he keeps everybody updated on social media and talks about his treatment and his trips to Houston and everything that's going on. And we continue to just
traffic in Baton Rouge is terrible.
Well, please let us know if we can do anything, man. We're here for you.
Appreciate that.
And I know, the community, the coaching community, the sports community, the D'Iberville community all follow and, whatever we can do. But we will continue to keep you, like I said, and your family, because it is a family thing when you deal with this, and our thoughts and prayers. And we know we serve a powerful Lord and a great healer, and he can take care of you.
No doubt.
Well, guys, I've enjoyed it, as always, man. I can't beat the scenery here, out here again on the terrace at South Beach Biloxi Hotel and Suites. I appreciate Delina opening it up for us, looking out over the Gulf, see a little thunder or saw a little lightning in the distance, so that's cool. That's one of the things I always enjoy about being on the water and seeing the storm way off out in the Gulf, and saw that just a second ago. But we've had a great time here with Jeremy Forehand and Jamey Foster, and we appreciate you tuning in. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Look forward to doing it again next week, as we will be recapping week 1 and previewing week 2 of the Mississippi High School football season, focusing on the Southern Six and some great teams here in South Mississippi. And we just want to continue to follow them here on 228 Sports. Jamey, appreciate it as always.
Hey, thank you guys, man. The honor's mine.
There you go. Jeremy, as always,
Thank
enjoy
you,
it.
Coach. Appreciate it.
There you
All-star
go.
coach, 1996 right there, Coach Bruce Thornton. Appreciate you.
There you go. I appreciate that. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you again next week.
You've been listening to the Southern Six Sports Podcast with Bruce Thornton. Stay in the game with 228sports.com. The Southern Six Sports Podcast is produced weekly by 228sports.com. All content and interviews are copyright of 228 Sports LLC. Contact us on the web for more information.